What is the most horrifying, haunting image or moment that you can't get out of your head? Story 1. The only really heavy thing I've witnessed was my uncle's wake. His wife had been shaky all day, until in the evening she broke down over his corpse, screaming and wailing, "You're the love of my life. Come back. Wake up." I didn't even have much attachment to my uncle because I didn't know him well and I was just a kid, but that made me cry. Also, the image of his face, my first time seeing a corpse the day of his funeral after avoiding it the past evening. His skin was so pale and waxy it looked weird, and there were spots of decay in the corner of his mouth because he'd been left out too long. Bad day. Answer. Similar thing with my grandma and my grandpa, who had just passed away at a nursing home. My grandma got the call and she immediately called us and we all went out to the home together. It chilled me to the bones when we walked into his room and he just looked like he was sleeping. My grandma let out this long, low wail and slowly climbed into the bed next to him, crying and rocking his body as if trying to wake him up. She always felt guilty about having put him in a home, but was in her 70s and was a tiny woman with a history of strokes, and he had Parkinson's, and it had gotten to the point she couldn't manage him alone. As the years passed, she had trouble getting around in and out of vehicles and would always say she couldn't wait for God to take her home. It was really sad to see, but she lived about 10 more years after he passed. One night, about a week after the 10th anniversary of his passing, after she missed her nightly phone call check-in with my parents, my dad and I went to her place to check on her and she had died in the tub. She had basically committed tragic end via her diabetes. She'd made a huge meal for herself and written a note by her insulin by the bathroom sink that just said, "I'm ready." That was just a few weeks before Christmas, and that was the one year my family didn't get together because my grandma was the one that organized everything. I was also working as a custodian at our church at the time, and it was surreal to be at work while setting up for her funeral. That whole experience is burned into my mind forever. Story 2. Talking over the phone to my dying grandfather as he laid on this deathbed while my dad held the phone up to his ear. He couldn't talk anymore at this point, but towards the end of the call he let out one dry, rattling moan. Especially coming from somebody as sharp and stoic as he was, that was something. Answer. Had the same thing happened to us, except it was with my dad and I was holding the phone for my sister who hadn't the chance to fly out yet. He was hospice at home and was doing really well one day. Actually, trying to decide if he wanted to come off hospice. And then the next day, he was mentally gone, and we were just waiting for his body to follow. I'll never forget those few days. He was someone who had chronic pain, so he would have physical reactions to pain by screaming out and clenching his arms up in the air like he was getting ready to box with someone. I took over giving him morphine and just slowly kept giving him more. In the middle of the process, my mom was telling him she was okay with him letting go and that she loved him. I swear he turned his head towards her and mumbled, "I love you too." He had been non-responsive before and after that. I will never forget the whole process experience. Story 3. My little niece died. When I saw her before she was buried, I noticed the stitches in her lips, keeping her mouth closed. It looked like they were pulling, as if she was trying to open her mouth but couldn't. I don't know why that bothered me so much. I think about it all the time. Edit. It wasn't a total open casket funeral, but close family did see her before she was buried. We left her pictures and notes and had the chance to say goodbye. Answer. I have a fear of open casket funerals because of an experience similar to this. I'm sorry you've experienced that, and if you're still going through this, it does get better. It took me a year or so of counseling and exposure therapy to calm myself when the image popped up. It still does from time to time, but is much less disturbing. You're not alone in having these intrusive thoughts, and you'll get through it. It just takes time. Story 4. Probably when I was 12 and I watched this woman, who I fully believe will eternally burn in hell, cut this man on a motorcycle off. His daughter was on the back. There was a horrific accident, and the man lay there dying. I ran out with my dad, who had his medical bag. Him being a massive show-off paid off this once. The girl was covered from head to toe in road rash. She was in shock and stood over her father, stared at him and kept saying, "Dad? Dad." It was awful, and I had nightmares about it for months. The poor man ended up dying in the hospital, and I can't imagine what the daughter must have gone through from then on. Answer. There was a guy in my church who went to pick up his sister from school with his bike. He didn't have any other means of transportation, and he was the most careful biker. They were almost home when a woman disregarded them and turned right in front of them. The little girl died on impact. The dude died in hospital later. It was 100 hours. Not his fault at all. I fully believe that there must be severe punishment for people who disregard others on the road, take chances, and cause accidents. Story 5. My dad suffered with a terminal illness. Was horrifying watching him fade away in front of my eyes, and there wasn't anything anyone could do about it. I was there the moment he died, and that moment will live with me forever. Answer. Same here. And literally 2 seconds after he died, his cat jumped on top of him, and I gasped, and my mom said, "No, let him see that he's gone." My dad's cat stayed in the spot where he died for 3 days after his body was gone, only getting up to use the litter box. After 3 days, we heard him running up and down the hall in the middle of the night, and he went back to normal. He still comes running out looking for my dad if you say his name, and my dad died in deck. Story 6. My parents yelling and my brother's face while trying to get me out because I was trapped under a vehicle. My leg was being crushed. Story 7. That guy in France that fell out of a 3rd-story window onto a 4-foot pole, and it went into his jerk and ended as a hump in his shoulder, but didn't break the skin. He was still alive when the paramedics came. It was all on video. Crazy. Link from You Undertaker Firewall 89. Answer. I remember that video. Not gonna rewatch since it's clear in my mind as the day I watched it. I thought it was unfair that he didn't die right away. Why did he have to suffer so much? But after watching so many videos on WPD and another site, you realize life ain't fair and life is so fragile. Some people live for days with gruesome wounds, and some die from falling wrong. Story 8. If anyone remembers Yakbaks, I was home alone, 12 and heard my brother calling my name desperately over and over and over, followed by "Please, come help," coming from the attic. Went up there, and it was coming from a big box, and I open it, and I can tell it's just an old Yakbak. Then it sputters and dies, and I had an intense sense of dread. And then the light bulb in the attic popped. Almost broke my leg getting out. Sat on the driveway till my parents got home. He swears he doesn't remember making that recording edit. Since I'm tired of telling you youngsters what it is, here's an old addy. For a Yakbak. Answer. Somewhat related. My dog and I are in my finished basement, where all the cool things are. She starts barking at me, which isn't new. It usually means she wants me to stop playing a game and play with her. No problem. I put the controller down, get up to grab the TV remote, and shut off the TV all while the dog keeps barking. It's a bit excessive, but whatever. I bend down to put the remote on the coffee table when I suddenly hear myself yell, "Shut the fudge up!" I'm 100% certain the voice is mine, but it came from upstairs. It was just the two of us. Maybe I just had some sort of dissociative event or something, except the dog is now quiet and staring up the stairs. She seems uneasy, and I sure as hell am, but I go to her to make sure nothing happens. No one is at the top of the stairs. There's no creaking of footsteps above us. I run up the steps and search the ground and second stories. No one else is in the house. Not sure what happened, but it still freaks me out a bit, even though it's been about a year since it occurred. Story 9. Watching my 1-year-old son pass away while on the transplant list. I love you, buddy, to the stars and back. Story 10. Little boy who had been mauled by 2 dogs. His whole head had been degloved. Somehow he lived. Lost part of his arm, and they broke a lot of his bones by literally biting right through them. Edit, the dogs were 2 different breeds, but neither one was a pit bull, just to address the arguments in the comments. Story 11. My sister called me for help because she went to visit our grandma and she had fallen. I run across the street and look in the patio window to see my grandma on the floor with a pool of blood forming. I was so terrified, and to make things worse, the door was locked and her landlord couldn't get it open. So I kicked the door on while calling 911. She was okay. It was just a big scrape on her forehead, no stitches needed. But seeing her motionless with blood pooling was too much. Afterwards, I helped my mom bleach all the blood up. It was something I'd rather never have to do again. The scent, the amount of blood, and how hard it is to clean. Story 12. I work in a hospital. A patient pressed her call bell, and when I walked in, she asked if I could tell her family she loves them, but an angel is here for her. About 5 minutes later, she passed away. Story 13. Why you should always wear your motorcycle helmet. IRC the pic was actually of someone who'd survived a tragic end attempt using a shotgun, but that's the title it always had. No way in hell I'm linking it, because if you've seen it, then just saying the title is enough. And if you haven't seen it, you really shouldn't. Rotten.com. Not even once. Story 14. When my cat was being euthanized, how fast it was, the last breath, his ice pupils getting so dilated and looking like they burst. It was awful. Edit. I want to thank everyone for commenting. This experience just happened to me last month, and seeing everybody else's thoughts is helping me start to get over this. I appreciate it. Answer. Back in 2010, I adopted this lovely, gorgeous cat that I named Copper. She was a strawberry blonde striped cat, very small for her age, 10 years old. I loved her. After about 4 months of having her, she began having seizures. Really bad ones. I took her to several vets, spending a couple $1,000s, trying to figure out the issue. Unless she got a CAT scan, which would be several thousand more, they wouldn't be able to tell. I had to put her down. I couldn't afford a CAT scan that would probably tell me it was a fatal issue that couldn't be resolved. Several vets said this. I insisted on being in the room with her. She was so grateful and happy I was there. She meowed her last goodbye to me when I held her. I loved the fudge out of that cat. We did the right thing. It was not the easy thing, but it was the right thing. You eased your pet's suffering by sacrificing some of your own happiness. That is love. It will get easier as time goes on. You will remember fewer of the negative things and more of the good ones. The pain will be less raw. But darn, I cried just typing this up. And this happened 9 years ago. You will always feel it, and that's okay. Just remember that you made a completely unselfish decision. You chose to euthanize your pet so they wouldn't suffer. You chose to stay with them so they weren't afraid. And you chose the manner of their passing so they wouldn't hurt. We are the noble savage. Story 15. My friend having been shot through the left side of his body. He was pale. He was gasping for breath. And we were tearing out his clothes and gear so we could look for the bullet wound. I'll carry this image for the rest of my life. Story 16. I was traveling in the rural parts of my country. We were taking a piss stop and saw a large truck pass us. After driving for about 5 minutes, we saw a working motorcycle on the side of the road. Beside it was a corpse with its skull flattened and brain splattered everywhere. We immediately called the cops and notified them about the passing and the truck, since that was the only vehicle that passed us to have caused this. I was 12 then. Edit. We were sure about the truck because it left a bloody trail behind. I think my parents decided not to pass the crime scene until the police arrived in order to preserve the evidence. Like many takedown and accidents in my country, they go unsolved. We couldn't identify the truck very well because the time was nearly dawn. At least my family was never bothered again with the case. Rip to that motorcyclist. Answer. My uncle told me a story from when he was a rookie cop. Body part detail. Whenever you go to a motorcycle crash, there's almost always pieces missing. Sometimes they're easy to find. Sometimes you gotta search. So he arrives to this motorcycle accident and notices the rider's head is missing, completely severed just below the bottom of the helmet. His sergeant points at him and says, "Body part detail." So he goes wandering off into the brush on the side of the road with another cop, and after a couple minutes, he finds a helmet. He holds it up and says, "Found the helmet." The other cop points a light in his direction and says, "Look again." So he does. That's when he notices the bloody bit of neck sticking out of the bottom. Story 17. While not a real-life scenario, the curb stomp scene from American History X is just seared in my mind. The close-up of the guy when he opens his mouth and bites on the curb, I can just feel the grit in my mouth. I'm cringing here typing about it. Answer. I always had a problem with this scene. I found it unrealistic how the guy just obeyed Derek. I know he had a gun, but I think most people would beg and plead and either curl up in a fetal position or try to get away or just make the guy shoot them instead. No fudge way I would just set my teeth on the curb like that and stay perfectly still so he can give me a more painful passing, paralysis, or, at best, hideously disfigure me. I'd rather be shot. But obviously, as has been made clear from the comments here, it was played out that way to fudge people up and have maximum impact, no pun. Intend. Story 18. The time someone threatened to eliminate me with a knife while I was at a house party. Long story short, some jerk bumped into me and called me a fudge. I called him a jerk, and then he grabbed me and pointed a knife at my face. Internally, I was freaking out, but I was able to give him the IDFC right now expression. So I just shook my head in disappointment at him. He left, and I sat down, hyperventilating, because shock I almost got eliminate for someone bumping into me. Story 19. I work as an intern at a funeral home. When my boyfriend eliminated himself, my boss and I took care of his body ourselves. The moment you'll never forget, though, is going to pick him up at the medical examiner's office and seeing the ID tag around his ankle. That made it real. I'll also never forget driving him to the crematory in our hearse, pushing his body into the retort, saying my final goodbyes, and starting the machine. Story 20. Back in the day, I was on call for the burn unit on Sunday morning, Nov 1st. Life Flight brought in a guy who was having a family bonfire on his ranch for Halloween. Eventually, ended up passing out tipsy in the fire after everyone else went to bed. The only parts of his body that weren't burned were his butt cheeks, which were pressed against the ground. So, 98. TBSA full thickness burn. The guy looked completely charred and black, hair burnt off and everything. He looked like a prop from a disaster movie. Or, for those that may get the reference, Donald Logue's vampire character in Blade when he arrives at the hospital in the beginning of the movie. What haunts me is I see him in the trauma bay looking like a movie prop. Then he wakes up screaming. I've seen some shoot, but that still haunts me. The misery, pain, the horror. I'll never forget that. Long story short, I did everything in the playbook to keep him alive, but he died. His survival rate from that injury was 0. Answer. In 2017, a man ran into the fire at Burning Man, the big fire with several thousand witnesses. My friends and I are volunteers for the event, and some were part of the burn perimeter that evening. Seeing him just dodge all the volunteers and firefighters and jump in, instantly being fully engulfed it never leaves you. Some of his family friends were there when he did it, but his son and a number of other people from his group had to be tracked down in the city, 70,000 people, no cell phones, etc., to be told. It was a really rough night. Story 21. Watching the house burn down, knowing that every second that passes means it's more likely for my sister to not make it out. Miss you, girl? Story 22. So it was right after school, high school, and my mom had just picked me up. We get to the gate to turn out of the school, and we see a kid go under a garbage truck. Driver couldn't see him. Seconds after he went under it, the truck drove to get to the next house. We see the truck bounce up, then go back down. Me and my mom freak out in the car, thinking the boy's head or body got ran over. The truck comes to a stop 5 feet away. We see the kid. He's alive, but his leg is completely destroyed. Flat like a pancake. He kept lifting it with his arms, but it wouldn't move. Never heard what happened to him. But with the way his leg looked, he must have lost it. Answer: my uncle was hit by a motorcycle as a kid. He was crossing the road at a zebra crossing with a crowd of other kids, and the bike plowed through them all. He was in and out of hospital for 5 years with a leg that was shattered 20 times over below the shin. They saved his leg, but he lost a few inches of height on that side and ended up with early onset Parkinson's. They can't prove the accident caused it, but they strongly suspect so. The motorcyclist is still paying my uncle, and he is in his 60s now. Story 23. I've been in a domestic accident, and a piece of glass cut my wrist open. I'll never forget looking at my exposed tendon as the blood dripped out of my arm. Truly terrifying. Story 24. When I found my dad had passed away overnight in his bed, his face seemed frozen in fear, like he saw some demons who came to drag him to hell or something. I told everyone he passed away peacefully in his sleep, but goddamn, that face is horrifying. I wonder what he saw before he died. Story 25. I had to stay for about a week at a not-so-great motel. There was a homeless man who sort of roamed the premise. I don't doubt he was mentally ill. There was also a homeless mutt of some sort that would show up every so often. This hotel was within walking distance of Monterey Bay and sat right off an exit from Highway 1. One night, I was returning to the motel, and suddenly the dog came running toward the road. The homeless man was yelling at the dog, basically pushing him into the street. The dog ran straight into the path of an SUV with a sickening thud. The driver must not have seen the dog, because she did not slow down until after she'd hit him. The police eventually came, and I remember them wrapping up the dog's dead body in some sort of blanket and lifting it into the back of the trunk. Story 26. Mine isn't as gory or traumatic as it is sad, but my father passed away in February of 2018 to brain cancer, and walking in the room and hearing his staggered breathing and seeing how pale and sickly he looked really eliminate me inside. And then the sound of my mom's wails and sobs calling out his name and saying, "Why God, why?" It was really sad, especially as I held his hand and slowly felt it go cold and purple. Story 27. Driving up on a car accident that I quickly realized was my parents' vehicle and another person's truck. My parents' truck was destroyed. As I ran up to the scene, a couple police officers intercepted me and stopped me asking who I was. I told them a bunch of info, and after about a minute and a half of talking, he told me my mom was deceased. It wasn't until that moment my brain registered the body bag lying on the ground next to the passenger door of the truck. Having to leave your own mother lying dead on the side of the road is not something I wish on anyone. I was told my father was in critical condition and taken to a hospital about 10 miles away, and the officer suggested if I wanted to see him, I should hurry. The whole drive, I assumed I was going to walk into the ER and be informed I had lost both my parents. Thankfully, my dad survived and recovered, but I will never forget the look of utter hopelessness and on his face when he woke up 3 days later and I had to tell him the love of his life had died. Answer: I will never forget the look of utter hopelessness and on his face when he woke up 3 days later and I had to tell him the love of his life had died. Man, I am so sorry for your loss, and I am so sorry for your dad's loss. I am a father who lucked out and married the love of his life. I find happiness in nothing that doesn't involve her. We kiss dozens of times a day. We both run to the other room to hug the other. We have intimacy daily. And we've been married 25 years. I think about the exact sort of thing your father experienced and nearly break down. Finding the